All right, good afternoon. A little bit better. Good afternoon. All right, there we go. MMI, I'd like to welcome Mr. Ed O'Neill as our first Commandant Series speaker this year. Mr. O'Neill graduated and was commissioned as a second lieutenant through MMI's ECP program in 1980. He went on to finish his bachelor's degree and enter into active duty as an Army medevac pilot and aeromedical evacuation officer. He left the service in 1992 to pursue a civilian career with Progress Rail and served in several leadership positions, including the Vice President of Leadership Development. Mr. O'Neill retired earlier this year to pursue his continued passion of helping develop servant leaders in business and community service organizations through his new venture, Unfazed Leadership. He has served on numerous MMI boards and is a true friend of the school. Please welcome Mr. Ed O'Neill.
I've got far too many things over my ears here, so I'll dispense with a mask if that's okay with you. Athletes in this group, how many of you are athletes? Bunches of you? Most of you? Many of you up there as well? Okay, good. And how many are in the ECP program? Okay, a few of you. LEP? Many of you? Okay, great. Anybody in a service academy prep program? Bunches of you as well. Okay, good. And any other commissioning programs like Air Force or any Navy programs? I know we have some cooperative arrangements. So all of you have a different, or many of you have different roles, and that's good. And we like to have that diversity in terms of both direction that you're going and really the background that you come from as well. And that's going to be very helpful with what I'd like to spend some time talking with you about this morning. I have an old friend named Jack, and excuse me, we're very close. I would excuse me. I would say that Jack is probably, he would probably look at me and tell you, if he could, that I'm his best friend. And I think I would say the same thing about him. But Jack is kind of getting old. Back maybe years ago, he was kind of my hiking buddy. We would go out and backpack and hike, go all over the place, up into the mountains, find some trail, just explore, just have a good time. And Colonel mentioned that I retired a few months ago, and my opportunity to spend more time with him has increased. The job was pretty busy before. I traveled a lot internationally, wasn't around as much, but now, even with COVID, I spend a lot of time with him. In fact, most mornings we go out and walk. Now, I kind of have to slow my pace down a little bit because he is getting older and not able to move quite as fast as he used to, but he also has a lot of curiosity. He likes to explore. He likes to see the world around him, the sights and the sounds, and often he kind of has to hold me back. He wonders, I think, why I'm in such a hurry to finish whatever we're doing, to get wherever we're going. And often, it gets to the point where I tug a little bit on his leash, and eventually he starts to move on, and we do things. So Jack's a good old dog. I like him. I've had him for a while. If you'll look on the back corner there, right next to the door there's a portrait on the wall of General BARFIELD. Thomas BARFIELD, Major General, was the president of Marion Military Institute when I was here from 1978 to 1980, and I'm not sure when he started and when he finished, but the entire time we were there, I was here, he was the president, and you can see that skinny-looking kid right there. I think I look significantly different back then than I do now, but you may recognize me. But there was something about General BARFIELD that was really, I guess, instrumental in forming my approach to life as a cadet while I was here. And in particular, it had to do with a chapel gathering like this. And most of the speakers that we had in chapel were people that came from the outside, like me, right? But in this particular case, General Barfield was the chapel speaker, and he talked about something that I've remembered for over 40 years, and there's not another chapel service like that where I remember the details of it the way I did this one. And it goes something like this. And this is probably a very old story. I'm quite certain it didn't come from him originally, because I've Googled it since then and found that it's a story that's been told for many years. So it goes way back. But it goes something like this, that a man was walking in the desert and he heard a voice. And the voice told him, pick up some pebbles and put them in your pocket. And if you do so tomorrow, you'll be both happy and sad. And the guy's thinking, what is this guy talking about? Pick up pebbles, put them in my pocket, I'll be happy and sad. Why would I want to pick up rocks and weigh myself down? And, you know, I'm in the desert, I'm thirsty. Rocks are the last thing I need water. But he obeyed the voice, he picked up some pebbles, put them in his pocket. And the next morning, he reached into the pocket and pulled out the pebbles that he had, and they'd all become diamonds and rubies and sapphires, precious stones. And at that point, he was happy that he picked up some of those, but he was sad that he didn't pick up more. The fact that he didn't pick up more of those was lost opportunity for whatever, to become rich, to have something beautiful that was his now, but he left those on the ground. He had some, but not as many as he could have had if he had filled his pockets with more of those, or even filled a backpack full of those things. So the question is, why do we often ignore the opportunities that present themselves? It may be that we're busy, that we're distracted, we're procrastinating. Maybe we have different priorities that argue against whatever it is that's pulling at our attention. Maybe we fail to see what's going on. We can't separate this idea of rocks from precious jewels and diamonds and so forth. Or maybe we're just so wrapped up in the world around us and social media and other distractions that we just miss what's going on around us. Maybe it's just plain hard. I mean, there's something said to be doing, to do hard things to accomplish a mission, but sometimes you just wear out from doing all of that, and you just need to step back a little bit and rest. And I get that. I understand that. But you've been given significant opportunity here as cadets. This is something special. You're gaining an education in a fine institution. You have set a trajectory in your lives through whatever program you're in, and I heard a lot of them, whether it's being in the reason for being here is in athletics or pursuing some other career or a military career at some point. Lots of different reasons, but you're given great opportunity to do a lot of things that most people wouldn't be able to do. And I know Colonel Mollahan has talked to you about this, about how you need to take advantage of those opportunities. You need to do things like, he told me this morning that one of the things he talked about is that the things that you're asked to do here, you can do. It's not beyond your capability to do it if you set your mind to it and if you're disciplined. And if you finish what you started, don't give up, even when it's difficult. Now, you're facing one of the weirdest situations the world has ever seen. I mean, just looking out here with these masks on your faces, it tells me that something has changed significantly. And this, today is the first time I've spoken to any group in person in months. I'm happy to see you. I wish we didn't have all these masks on, but just the fact that you have those tells me that you're facing some things that have made your life much more difficult than we wish it was. However, I also understand that you're finding ways to overcome that and to take advantage of the opportunities that you have. Don't give up on that. So we live in a busy, chaotic, and hectic world. Back in about 1987, the Army War College came up with a concept that it calls VUCA, V-U-C-A, and it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that's really what the world looks like right now. Much more than it did, say, 10, 12 months ago before COVID happened. But the idea about VUCA and about everything associated with it is if you recognize it and you seek to overcome it, you can find ways to do it. And the fact that you're here and operating at this school right now is a testament to that, to leadership that has come up with a plan to allow you to do the things that you need to do to be successful as a leader. So often, if we don't figure out how to deal with those things, we have to live with regret. Now, some of the stones, if you will, that I picked up at MMI were really the result of grace that somebody gave me. And in particular, there were two people. One of them was the commandant. His name was Ralph Livingston. And the other was the assistant commandant, Tom Pope. And I made a lot of mistakes when I was here. I wouldn't say I made more than most cadets, but I made my share of them. And these guys, both of them, extended grace to me that in retrospect I probably didn't deserve much of, but they saw something in me that allowed me to overcome all of that VUCA, all of the bad judgment that I exhibited, and they allowed me to continue in leadership and in my academic career and so forth. And as a result of that, I hope I've at least been a little bit successful in life and my career. But there are a few things I regret about my relationship with those two, with one in particular, and that was the assistant commandant, Colonel Pope. After I left active duty in the Army at the end of 1992, sometime later, within the next year or so, I ran into Colonel Pope in a restaurant in the town near where we lived. And he didn't live there, but he lived in another town in Alabama and just happened to be traveling through there. And he recognized me and I recognized him. It was, maybe 12, 13 years after I'd left here. And we sat and talked for a long time and kind of caught up on things, learned what each had been doing. And at the end of that time, he said, "You need to come visit me sometime." And I said, "Yes, sir, I'll do that." And he looked at me and said, "No, you won't. All of you cadets always say that, but you never do." I thought, no, there's no way. I'll come see you. I'll come visit you. Well, life got in the way. By then, it's 4 kids, right? And a busy job and a lot of travel and all the things that go along with that. And time passed, and I didn't see him. And several years later, I'd heard that he'd passed away. That was a rock, a pebble that I left on the ground, unpicked up. Something that could have been a gem that I frittered away. I wasted it because I wasn't willing to take that extra step and pick it up and go with it. Lost opportunity. Think about the opportunities you have here. What is it that you may be leaving on the ground right now? Or thinking forward a little bit, what are some of the opportunities that you're going to have that you can't afford, and you know right now that you can't afford to leave them on the ground, but you're tempted maybe to go in another direction because you're busy, because you have other priorities, because you're just not focused on doing those things, thinking you have all the time in the world to get that done, which is what I thought I had with Colonel Pope, but I realized later on that I didn't. So fast forward a number of years, Colonel Livingston is a different story. And I should have shown you Colonel Pope's picture as well. Bad pictures taken from the annual, right? Back then it was all black and white. We didn't have a lot of color pictures. Go figure. It's like ancient times, right? So Colonel Livingston, we called him snake eyes. You could look at those eyes, and you can even tell from this picture, they were piercing. I mean, he would look right through you, and he knew when something was going on, and he never let you off with that. He called you on it every time. And in my case, I was smart enough that when he did call me on it, I kind of flipped roles and turned around and started moving back in the right direction. I've always been grateful for that. I was talking to his daughter, actually trading messages with her yesterday when I was coming back, when I told her I was coming down here. And I wanted to ask how old her dad is. And I talked to him a few months ago, and she said he's 93 years old. 93 years old, still going strong, lives in Birmingham. And a few months ago, well, several years ago, he received an honor from the Alumni Brigade. One of the things that they do for faculty and staff that are honored, they're chosen by cadets and alumni for what they've done for the school. And he was honored in that way, and I was able to see him back here. But then a few months ago, I was thinking, I need to go see him. Then COVID hits. Can't go see him. 93 years old, I'm thinking, am I going to miss another opportunity like that? And I said, that's not going to happen. So get on the phone with him. I'm connected with him through Facebook. He's 93 years old, right? Facebook. But he's posting stuff all the time and talking about stuff he's done. And we called and caught up for about an hour, and I realized that that was another gem I'd picked up. I didn't let that go by the wayside, but I took advantage of that opportunity. Again, what other opportunities do you have here that you could let go if you're not careful, but that you should be willing and able to pick up? So you'll be faced with a lot during your time here, whether you're here for a one-year program or something longer. And it's possible to waste those opportunities for a number of reasons. And despite all I gained, I know I left some things on the table, and a lot of those are lost forever. Others I was able to recover, but not without a light going on later, and then kind of realizing that I needed to do some hard extra work. And it's not that I was without hope in these things, but the pain that I discovered was that it's never easier to have to do it right the second time, and it's never cheaper. It's always better to do it right the first time, and don't let that opportunity pass. And I learned that here, and I learned that in business. Never cheaper to do it right the second time. So the story about pebbles or picking up rocks or stones or illustrations of important things, there are other uses of stones that are like that. Does anyone know what this is? Have you ever seen something like that? Do you know what it's called? Anybody? Don't know? Any hikers, backpackers in here? A lot of times when you're hiking out on a trail, you'll see, did I see a hand up there in the back saying, yes, you do know what it is? Close, close. So let me back up a little bit. In the eastern United States, a lot of times we mark trees with what's called a blaze. It's a colored paint on a tree that points the direction of something. But in ancient times, or in places where you didn't have trees, you had a stack of rocks, and it could serve one of two purposes. One was to commemorate something really important that had happened there that you wanted to remember, and another was as a guide for how to stay on the trail, since we didn't have these blazes. And this is called a cairn, C-A-I-R-N, a cairn. And the idea is we have things that come into our lives, these rocks and so forth, that sometimes serve as a reminder of things that happened that were significant in our lives, but they also help keep us on the trail. And one of those is this little rock right here. It says Rockathon, 1979, and it's signed by a guy named Charlie Coxwell, or he wrote his name on it. He was a cadet as well. He's 1 year ahead of me. And I won't tell you everything about this particular thing, but this is one of my treasured possessions. It's just a stupid little rock, right? Wrote on it with a Sharpie or something, or whatever kind of pen we had back in those days. But I keep it among my most treasured possessions, and the reason for that is not that there's any inherent value in the rock itself. It's not a jewel, it's not a diamond, it's not something that's going to turn into a jewel or a diamond, at least not literally. But figuratively, it reminds me of my time here. It reminds me of things that I accomplished, people that I knew, and again, the direction that it set my life on to move where I needed to go in the future. So, what things can you take away from here that are reminders? And sometimes it's good to have something physical to remind you of those things. That's why people have, and you see this a lot in the military, especially an I love me wall, right? It's all of my trophies and plaques and all of the things that somebody has given me to tell me how great I am. And, you know, whether I'm great or not is a function of what's going on in my own mind at that particular moment. But we all need reminders of those things. So, what can you do right now that you will be reminded of even 40 years later? That was 1979. So, you have an opportunity, like I did, to pick up stones that have particular meaning to you while you're here. And they won't mean anything to anyone else, like that rock, but they'll mean a lot to you. And you need to take every opportunity to pick them up. I have another friend, also named Jack, and he would be, I told him I was going to mention him today. He might be a little bit angry about the fact that I led with my dog named Jack, and then I added him in at the end of it. But Jack's a pretty good friend of mine. Jack is, I think, class of 1971 at MMI. And I met him at Alumni Weekend many years ago, and there's a bunch of us that get together every year to come back here because we love what this place did for us. And a lot of times we didn't realize that until years later. We started putting two and two together and realized that we really did have a lot of precious stones we picked up here, even if we didn't quite understand it at the beginning. But once we started coming back and started talking to friends and new friends that we met along the way, we realized just how impactful this place was on our lives. So this last year, or actually this year, would have been 40 years for me. And we canceled Alumni Weekend, at least in person, and we did it via Zoom like everything else, right? So we missed that, but I did have an opportunity last fall to get together with a bunch of other graduates. And I was actually at the beach in Florida, and a bunch of us were there at the same time. Jack was just a couple of buildings down from where we were staying. I went down to the beach and sat down and talked with him. And Jack retired this week, 2-3 days ago, after over 50 years flying airplanes and helicopters in various roles. He flew for the Army, he flew for U.S. Customs, he flew civilian medical evacuation helicopters. Over 50 years. He started out flying in a Piper Cub, I think, when he was, 13, 14 years old, something like that. And I'm sitting on the beach talking with Jack about how much, swapping stories like aviators do, lies about how great they are and all the fantastic things they did and so forth. I was talking to Jack about how much I missed it because I'd not flown since 1992. And he said, and he was very kind about it, but I could tell there was a little dig in there. He said, why don't you just stop talking about it and go out and rent a helicopter and get an instructor and go out and fly? And I said, why didn't I think of that, right? So 2 weeks later, I found a guy. I went right back to the room, got on the internet, found somebody close to me that had a helicopter, was an instructor, called him up, made an appointment, and a couple of weeks later, I went out and flew this thing. And you talk about flying a lot, and people say, oh, you'll pick it up right away. It's like riding a bicycle. And I thought, yeah, right, there's this fear and uncertainty and doubt that creeps in. Sometimes you call that FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I'm thinking, no, it's been too long. I can't do this. I'm too old. I don't have the skills and so forth. I got in that helicopter and I flew it like I'd never got out before. And we went back to the hangar and got out, and he had a student over there waiting for him for his lesson. And he walked up to the guy and said, "This guy hasn't flown in 27 years, and he hovers better than you do." And I thought, yeah, why did I wait so long? Why did I leave those gems on the ground when they were right there ready to pick up? Why did I spend all of that time moaning about what I lost and what I didn't have now when I could have just gone out and done it? There are a lot of things like that when you're given opportunity, and in some cases they're gone forever if you don't take them then. Other times, well, you can go back later if you make a choice to do that. That's that little funky little helicopter that I flew a few months back. So think about what you're faced with here. Think about the opportunities that you have. Think about what you're able to do here that you won't be able to do anywhere else, and the opportunities that you have now that you may not ever get again, and pick up those stones. Now, there's something extra that I want to say about this. And last time I put these shoes on with the other group, I realized one of them didn't fit very well, and I realized that little rock that I was holding in my hand a minute ago was in the toe of the shoes, and I walked around with it for about 5 minutes with that big rock in there. I'm not going to do that this time. But these are really cool shoes. When I first got them, they actually smelled like grapes. They don't smell that way anymore after I've worn them a few times, but these are honest-to-goodness Kool-Aid Reebok shoes, and they were a gift. You ever go to one of those dirty Santa things at Christmas time where you have presents and somebody, kind of white elephant type things where, somebody put something out there that's just a joke, right? You think, nobody's going to get that. But I saw these, somebody else picked that, and they were trying hard to get rid of it and get another gift, and I said, I'm getting those shoes. I knew I could do something with them. So I got them, and they just happened to be exactly my size. And I guess the point of this is there are a lot of things that you can pick up while you're here, but you don't have to be miserable doing it. You don't have to be business all the time. There's a time to be all about business. There's a time to be all about discipline and so forth. But there's also a time to have fun. I'm not talking about cutting up. I'm not talking about doing things inappropriate. I'm not talking about violating policy, any of the things that, the administration here would not be happy with me if I suggested. But I'm just talking about lightening up sometimes. And when you have the opportunity to do something, try to have a little bit of fun doing it. And while you're picking up those stones, just remember that you can also put on your purple shoes when you're doing it. And things will turn out a lot better if you do it that way. So, what stones can you pick up now that are going to yield great benefit years down the road? And can you put your purple shoes on when you do it? If you can, you'll be successful. Thank you.